Good morning folks, 21st Century Caveman here. Hope everybody's safe, hope everybody's well. So in today's video then, I want to explain to you why I lined the ceiling of the hall stairs and landing with a fire retardant plasterboard and sealed it with intumescent acrylic sealant rather than just using your normal plasterboard and sealant. So basically there were three main reasons for this. And first and foremost, the main reason was the fact that the property has very poor insulation, and because of that I've had to do quite a bit of insulation in the property. For example, I've had to insulate above all of the ceilings on the ground floor just to try and retain more heat, and for that I used 200mm loft insulation. I've also fixed extra thick plasterboard to all of the ceilings just to try and give it that extra thermal layer. So the second reason is the fact that all of the ceilings are covered with Artex. Now I haven't actually had it tested for asbestos, but there's probably a 50-50 chance of it being present. Now the important thing to remember about products which may contain asbestos is the fact that you must never try and scrape this stuff off. It's going to be problematic basically. So with Artex then your options are to skim it over, you can board it over and then skim it, or board it over and then paper it, which is what I decided to do. And thirdly then, it was down to cost. I mean, that has to factor in somewhere, doesn't it? Because one of the main reasons people like us do DIY is to try and save a few quid. Now obviously it's alright saving money, but the important thing is that the job is done effectively. So in other words, it's fit for purpose. Now it's fair to say that you can buy plasterboards which are insulated, but they do tend to be very expensive, and there's no way I'm paying full whack for something like that if I can do it cheaply whilst doing it effectively and safely. And the fourth reason was the fact that if you look at the geography of the lounge in relation to the staircase, even though I'm going to have two very good heaters in the lounge, we can see that the stairs are open, and unless I do something to address the situation, all of that heat is going to go basically up the stairs and out of the roof, which once again is why I needed to think about insulating the roof. Now it might be the case that additionally I'll end up boarding off those stairs as well, but that's something I'll come to in a bit. So anyway, this is what I decided to do. I decided to insulate the ceiling using polystyrene sheets. So the sheets I went for then were 25mm thick, and they're 8x4s, and that in metric is just over 2.4 by just over 1.2 meters. So these have very good insulation value then, and they are used in the building construction industry. So I cut them with a snap-off blade and I secured them to the Artex ceiling using some Wix instant grab adhesive, which I must say worked very, very well. It is also fair to say that these polystyrene sheets are very, very fragile and they're very easy to break. And we can see, look, that one of the big sheets broke in half basically, so I had to glue the stuff together. And yeah, it may not look the prettiest job you've ever seen, but the fact is it will be effective. So having lined the ceilings with the polystyrene, we need to be aware the fact that they do actually potentially pose a fire hazard, because obviously, God forbid, if there's a fire, we don't want this polystyrene just dripping down on everything, do we, and making things even worse. So we've addressed the insulation, now we're looking at the safety, and this is where the fireboards came in. So these fireboards then, once again, I bought them from Wix. They're 12.5mm thick, and they are actually called fireboards because they are fire resistant. So it's important to stress they're not fireproof, but they will significantly enhance the fire resistance in a property. And so I decided to use these to board over the polystyrene. So there are one or two things you need to know about these fireboards then. The first thing is that they're really bloody heavy, but I also found that they were far more difficult to cut than normal plasterboard. Now, if you just got a small piece of this board and you just try to cut it on the floor, it's not really a biggie. You just score it a few times and then break it. However, if you're trying to trim down a really big board, then it's far more difficult if you've got things standing up, because trying to score this thing can be quite difficult and you have to do it on several occasions. So the long and short of it is, I found the best way to deal with this was simply to cut it to size using a conventional handsaw, and I decided to use one with small teeth. Okay then, so in order to secure the plasterboard to the ceiling, I bought some drywall screws which were about 70 odd mil in length. Now I found that these basically were not long enough, and the price of the longer drywall screws was quite extortionate really. So I had a lot of these turbo screws left. They were 100 mil, and I decided to use these. Quite apart from being very, very sharp and really good products, they're also corrosion resistant. But nevertheless, when I actually secured the boards to the ceiling, once I got it all sorted out, I did actually go for these with some rust-proof paint, just to make sure that nothing leached through the plaster and the paper, which I would eventually line this with. So that's the only other thing really you need to know about this. As I say, apart from the fact that it's bloody heavy stuff, it's a two-man job really. So where does the special sealant come in then? So as I've already mentioned, I used Intumescent Acrylic Sealant, and the reason is because, once again, this is a fire retardant product. So this would work very nicely indeed in conjunction with the fireboards, and I used it to seal around all of the edges and where all of the plasterboards butted together. So that basically would have meant that polystyrene insulation would have been protected from a fire far better than using a normal plasterboard. So, you know, the job was done cheaply, it was effective, but it was also fit for purpose. So hopefully that's explained why I use this product and the benefits of doing so. So in terms of cost then, if we're to look at an 8x4 sheet of this fire retardant plasterboard with an 8x4 sheet of polystyrene, the price is £15.20 plus £8. That gives a price of £23.20 per insulated sheet, and it also gives a thickness of 27.5 millimeters. Now, if you were just to go directly to the insulated plasterboard, then for an 8x4 sheet, it costs, the cheapest I've found it anyway, is 50 quid for a 27 millimeter board. But the thing about that is the fact that the actual plasterboard is a bit thinner. The plasterboard is only 9.5 millimeters thicker as opposed to the fireboards, which are 12.5 millimeters thick. So if you wanted to beef things up even more, you can buy insulated boards which are 55 millimeters thick. So in other words, just over a couple of inches. They're very expensive. They're £68 each. So my recommendation as a DIYer would be to go for the polystyrene and then plaster it over using the plasterboards. It's going to be a really nice, strong, fit for purpose option, and it's going to be a hell of a lot cheaper as well. So ultimately it's up to you what you do. You know, I'm not a professional builder or anything like that. This is just something which I decided to do after doing a little bit of research. It's worked for me, but whether or not it's the appropriate thing to do in your circumstances, then that's up to you. But anyway, look, once again, thank you so much indeed for watching. I do appreciate you dropping by. Please like, subscribe, tell your family and friends, and share. You take care. Bye-bye.